I'm sorry there was some confusion.
No, my apologies. I'm really, really sorry.
Good to see you.
You too. You too. Yeah. Good to see you, all of you. Oh, yeah. Pictures. Yeah. Sorry for being late. I thought it was at 5 o'clock. So I was sitting in a meeting in Doctors Without Borders. As you know, that a lot of our work at Doctors Without Borders is also affected by what is going on in Syria. So right now there's a lot of focus on all the hospitals being bombed, and unfortunately the bombing is targeting directly the people who are trying to help. So it's the ambulance for people, it's the hospitals, it's everywhere where normal people are trying to help each other. So we have a lot to do right now, so I was busy. I'm really sorry. I thought it was...
But you are working on Syria, so it's almost the same.
Yes. So did you guys do a brainstorm about what to do?
Not really. We just discussed the background. What is the issue? Why are people fighting? To try to find out.
Oh.
And then who are the parties fighting? And then we went all over the place,
Yeah. So Garba asked me a long time ago to come and talk about my personal story. And then we decided that we're just going to combine today the discussion, and I could just give you or give a small talk. And then after that, I think we should really talk about how we can organize ourselves, how we can do something more, because we had this huge demonstrations here and in Aarhus and other places, and now people are again talking about everything else. We're talking about the ghettos and the governments wanting to do things with integration here. So the focus has changed, and that's what happened with the media, basically. 1 second is Syria, the other minute is what is going on in Denmark. So in order to make sure that the people in Syria knows that they are not forgotten, we have to remember them. We have to not do what the media is doing and the government in Denmark is doing. We have to be the ones who actually keep having initiatives that go out and make the people know that we're still thinking about Syria. One thing that I wanted to talk about when it comes to my personal story, and I don't know, how many of you have heard about my story?
I have not heard.
Yeah?
Many years back.
Many years back then, okay.
It was just exciting.
I'll not spend a lot of time to talk about it. My name is Mozhdeh, and I'm a psychologist, and I have been working for the past 12 years with refugees and traumatized children all over the world. I have worked in the United States, in Canada, and in London. And right now, I came back to Denmark 3 years ago. And what I'm doing is that I have 2 days with Doctors Without Borders, where I work for them, and the rest of the time I have my own practice. And what I do there is I travel all over the country, and I teach municipalities, I teach psychologists, doctors, everybody who work with refugees in order so they have the information of how to treat them and how to work with them. Beside that, I'm doing a lot of, I talk to the media, I try to write articles, I go out and talk to people like you to make sure that we change the way we look at refugees. Because right now, when we think about refugees everywhere, we're thinking about a crisis, and it's a political issue. And my mission right now is to humanize the political issue. Make sure that people have a face of a refugee, that they know still human beings that we're talking about. And the Danish population, unfortunately, the majority has decided that it is a political issue. They have decided that we are really afraid of refugees and that they're going to come and storm our country. And I want to change that. I want to make sure that they know when they vote for this government that we have right now next year, that they do it open-eyed, with open eyes. So one of the things that I did last month is that I went to Greece and I visited one of the refugee asylum, or not asylum center, is a camp basically. So it's called Moria camp, refugee camp, and it's basically one of the worst refugee camps that you have in Europe. Everybody who comes to Lesbos, they end up being placed there. It's built for around 2,500 people, and right now there's 7,000 people living there, overpopulated basically. And I wish I had some pictures for you, but you have the camp, which is like a prison. You know, when you walk in, it is built like a prison, and there is police everywhere, and it's closed for the media. So I sneaked in with some of the refugees and were able to take some pictures there and talk to some of the families and some of the children. The conditions are absolutely horrifying. It's like being back to Stone Age. There's no heating. There is no water or toilets. Just basic things that you need in order to have a daily life. It doesn't function. The children are walking around, running around. Everybody's sick. Everybody have infections, and they're psychologically affected by it. The kids, their parents told me that they're all peeing their bed. They don't sleep in the night. They have nightmares. They're shouting, and there's a lot of aggression also. So it's kind of like a ticking bomb. You can feel the tension when you're walking around the camp. People are angry and very frustrated. They don't know when they will get out of the camp. They are not allowed to leave the island because the government has made an agreement with Turkey to send as many as possible back to Turkey. So as long as they're staying in the island, it's much easier for the Greece government to send them back, and that's why they are pushing people to stay and not allowing them to leave the island. And then there's prostitution, there is organized crime, there's a lot of drug going on. I went there during the night and I was walking around, and it was really, really sad to see there was a line of women just standing there, obviously, open, and the police was wouldn't do anything about it. And then I talked to somebody from the helping organization there, and I asked them, so does the police know what is going on? Prostitution should be illegal, drugs should be illegal, and what they said is that the police are actually part of this. They have an agreement with the police in Macedonia and Bosnia, and what they do is they actually transport some of these women from one country to another, and they sell them this way, and they even brand them, like how you brand cows and animals. They brand the women the same way, so they know that these women belong to Moria camp and they can be used other places. So it's organized in a very horrifying way. And one of the things that we don't talk about when we talk about refugees is the women. We talk about the children, of course. We talk about that there is a lot of single men traveling, but we don't talk about how vulnerable the women are. A lot of the women that I talked to, they told me that they don't get out of their tent because they're afraid that they will be there would be guys who would follow them. There has been incidents of rape, but the police doesn't do anything about it. And one of the most horrifying things that one of the women told me was that she had started using diapers, grown people's diapers, because in the night she wouldn't get out. She was afraid that she would get raped. And what you have to think about that now, what has changed from already from June is that the number of refugees coming to Greece has doubled again. So you have in average 70 people coming to just Lesbos, one of the islands, every day. And that is, even though European Union has made the agreement with Turkey, is to prevent people coming to Greece. And there is a family that I talked to from Syria, a Kurdish family. There was a woman, her husband, and 3 children. And she told me that the police in Turkey has captured them 5 times before they were able to take the boat and come to Lesbos. And every time they would actually put them in jail, they were beaten up, they were abused. And she said, the police would actually ask them, like, why are you doing that? Why are you leaving? Which is one of the questions a lot of Danes also ask. Why would you risk your life? Why would you risk your, kid's life? And some people I have talked to in Denmark, they get even angry. Like, why are they not responsible, these parents, and they put their children's life in danger? And what she said was brilliant, because what she said was, I looked at the police officer's face, and I would tell them, looking into their eyes, you can capture me, you can put me in prison, but if you let me out, tomorrow I would be at the same place, I would take the next boat. Because what I'm leaving behind is much, much worse than the idea of dying. Because there is no future for my children, there is no life for my children. And there's a professor that I talked to who works with refugees in Turkey, and I talked to him about this issue, and he said, look, what happens is refugees, they travel, when they flee from, let's just say Syria, Iraq, wherever, where their life is in danger in the beginning. In the beginning, when they arrive to a safe place, the relief is there, because their life is safe now. And that sense of relief, it's there maybe for a few months, maybe for a year, maybe even for 2 years. You're just grateful that you're alive, you're grateful that you're safe. But that changes after a year or 2. What happens is that you start thinking like every other immigrants think, is I want to have a job, I want to have stability, I want to have a home, I want to have my children go to school. So you start focusing on the normal needs everybody have in their life. And that is when they decide, I have to leave Turkey, or I have to leave Jordan, because there is no life for me here. There is no future for my children. And if you have anybody of you, some of you are refugees yourself, but if any of you have spoken to, refugees who are parents, the most important thing for them is that their children will get an education. And because they have kind of given up on themselves, my life is over, it's gone. When I lost my country, I lost my life. But my children, they have to have a future. They have to go to school. They have to get the things that I cannot get. So that's why they risk their life. And that makes sense. One of the reason I did what I did, going back to Greece, and now I'm planning to go to Iraq and visit some refugee camps there. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I was a refugee myself for the first 16 years of my life. I was born in Iran with 2 Kurdish parents, and Kurds are a minority group. They live in Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Turkey. And they don't have any rights in the countries that they live in. So they fight for basically having the basic democratic rights like everybody else has. And that has been going on for 100 years. And so you have Kurds being refugees all over the world, unfortunately. So we fled. I have 9 siblings. I was born the day where the revolution in Iran ended. There was a revolution, for you guys who are very young and don't remember that, in '79, where the king was overruled, and unfortunately there was an Islamic regime who came to the power instead of all the other opposition groups who were democratic and really wanted to have a democratic country. So they gave me the name Good News because my parents thought if she born that day, then she's coming with great news.
That's in your name? It's good news?
Good news. My
Okay,
name
good.
means good news. Yes,
Okay,
yes.
wow.
They thought I was good news. Yes, that changed very quickly. Very quickly. 6 months after my birth, I was in jail with my mom.
Wow.
And my big sister was in jail, and she was also she was one of the first women in the area where we're living in who were taken in prison. And she was, you know, it sounds like a movie when I talk about it. She was exchanged with a general that my father's political party has taken as prisoner. So they exchanged her with him. She was 13 years old, you know. She was not that important. The only thing she has done, she has been on the streets, you know, delivering flyers, and spreading flyers and talking about, you know, the Social Democrat political party that my father was part of. She was taken and was prisoned and was accused of spying on the government. So me and my mom were there in prison for almost 6 months, and then when we came out, there was no way out. We had to get out of our city. So we didn't pack, we didn't say goodbye to anyone. My mother didn't even get to say goodbye to her own mom. Unfortunately, my mom has lost all of her siblings and her parents, but she hasn't been to any of their funerals. She hasn't been able to say goodbye to any of them. My older siblings, they are much older than me. They had to leave their home, you know, their safe childhood behind. And that's the huge difference between me and them, but also between right now you have a whole generation of children who are, I call them children of the war. They are born in the war. They don't remember anything. Imagine all these children who were born in Syria since the war started. They haven't experienced anything else than this. And it was the same thing for me. You know, I don't remember my childhood without the sound of bombs or with the sound of Kalashnikov, you know, shooting around. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie called Saving Private Ryan. Do you remember that? Anyone? Saving Private Ryan is a movie, American movie, and it's about the first almost 5 minutes. Soldiers coming, you know, it's the Second World War. Soldiers coming to the shore, and they are shooted at. So it is violent. So like, you know, they are being shooted at again and again and again in 5 minutes, and people are dying and shooting at each other. And I remember we just came to Denmark, and I was sitting in a movie theater, and I saw this, and I had a flashback. I was totally back. I was deeply traumatized when I came to Denmark. So I was back in the war myself, and somebody came in and closed the door, and the click of the door kind of made me come back. And I was looking around, and I realized, shit, sorry my language, I'm here, and this that they're showing, this is my life. This has been my life for 16 years. But this is entertainment for these people. You know? The thought that, you know, the contrast between what I have lived for 16 years and the life of the people who are sitting there and just looking at it as entertainment, it was so overwhelming, you know. And I remember just, you know, starting to cry and getting out. So there is a huge difference between people who have had their childhood, their normal life, and then it was taken away from them because they know what they're losing. And then there are people like me, children who were born in war, and they don't remember anything else than that. So, there is actually research now looking at children who have grown up in war. There is reports about children in Syria. There is a report about children in Mosul. And this is new information. And in Harvard University, which is one of the best universities in the world, they have done research about this. And they have come up with a new diagnosis. Now we don't talk about post-traumatic stress disorder anymore when it comes to children of war. we talk about what is called toxic stress. And what is toxic stress? That it's healthy for all of us to have a little bit amount of stress in our life. It makes you, like me standing here before coming here, it's good. You're a bit stressed. Your nervous system is preparing you that you're doing something that is important. It makes you perform better. But for these children, they have been under enormous amount of stress for a very long time in their life, and they haven't had, caring people around them. By that, I don't mean that refugee children who are traveling with their parents, that their parents are not caring. But the reality is, also when I was in Greece and was seeing the families, the children are running around. They're everywhere. They're trying to figure out how to play, how to make sense of everything that's going around them. The parents are so traumatized themselves. They are so occupied with their thought about how to get out, how to provide for their families, that they don't have time to actually take care of their kids. I'll give you an example. My mother was shot in her face 12 times when I was 5 years old. I was there, I saw it. My brother was shot also. And when she was taken to the hospital, nobody came to me and asked me, how are you doing? What do you need, little girl? I remember the image that is still in my mind is me standing, in the middle of a village where you have a whole village, the people, everybody is surrounding you and just looking at you. And I'm looking at my mom and crying. But nobody, not one person who actually came and took me up and just hold me and to make sure that I was okay. We forget the children when there is war. We forget the children when we are stressed because it's about survival. So I have no doubt if that day somebody has actually taken care of me, if throughout the time, the year that my mother was away, if somebody has asked me how I was doing, what I needed, told me what was going on around me, why my mom was not coming home, I think mentally I would have been much more capable of handling my trauma than I am today. So toxic stress, what it does with these children is it affects every part of them. What is horrible is that research shows now that these children, their DNA is actually changed. So they pass it on to the next generation.
DNA change.
Your DNA is basically changed. I have always been afraid of that. One of the reasons why I don't have children is because I have always been afraid that I was going to give some of my trauma, to my children, because there's something called secondary traumatization, where there's one generation who gives it to the next generation. And now there's a physical, concrete evidence showing that that's happened. Another thing that happened is your brain is changed. Because when you're a child and you're under so much stress, your nervous system is activated and on alert all the time. So and your brain is still developing. So the area that is affected by it is your learning area and your memory. So the hippocampus, which is the area where your memory is loaded, it actually shrinks. So they have looked with MRIs at children and grown-ups who have chronic post-traumatic stress disorder or toxic stress. And they actually can see that your hippocampus is smaller than normal people. Okay? So that's why there is so many refugees who forget. I have had so many clients, so many patients who come into me and say, people think that I'm lying because I'm saying I don't remember. And nobody believes them that they can forget normal things like, their appointment. Or why I had this guy, he was a lawyer in Iraq, and now he was in Denmark, and he was like, I'm going to school language class with people who have never gone to school before, but why am I not learning anything and they're so good at it, Because his memory was so affected, because he was deeply traumatized. And then there's the physical part. And I was like, when I saw the research, seriously, I started crying because it answered many of the questions that I have, because I myself are one of the people who are traumatized and have these symptoms. One of the other symptoms are the physical part. People who have been traumatized children, who grow up like this, they start having problem with their back. They have problems with their stomach and gut, digestion problems, ulcer problems. They have infections. Their immune system is totally down, so they get infections after infection, chronic infections. They have chronic pain in their muscles, okay? Chronic inflammation in their muscles. All that I have, okay? And I've been fighting for, since I remember with these symptoms. And for me, it started right away after my mom was hospitalized. It started with every time I heard a loud noise, I would faint, basically. If I saw an angry face, if I saw people shouting at each other, I faint. Because, my system would just shut down. And that's how children react, because they don't have language for it. And then it became, I started having infections, throat infection, sinus infection, and they became chronic. After that, I started having, when I was a teenager, I started already there to have ulcer. What teenagers have ulcer, for God's sake? Traumatized people do, I wake up, in periods where I'm stressed, I still have nightmares. And my nightmare is the same thing. I'm stuck in Iraq. I cannot find my Danish passport. So I cannot get out. It's the same exact nightmare every time. And when I wake up in the morning, I have to pull myself out of the bed because I have pain everywhere. I really literally feel that somebody has taken a bat and just beaten every part of my body. But I know I have to function, so I take a pill and start functioning, go out and fight for your cause. Because it's not about me anymore. When you are a survivor of war, it's no longer just about you. God has given you a gift. If you don't believe in God, somebody has given you a gift. Somebody given you a gift of life, and you cannot waste that. You cannot just lie in your bed and feel sad for yourself. That option is just not existent. Because there's children out there who doesn't have the privilege that you have gotten asylum and you're in a safe place, and they need your help. They need to be heard. And that's why we're here today. Because there are people out there, they want to know that their voices are heard. And I know that you can sit here and think, well, how can we do that? Is it even possible to do that? I'll tell you a little story and then we can go for a break. When I was a kid, one thing that I hated was my dad's radio. He got this big, I'm sorry my language now, big motherfucking radio. Okay? Sorry my language. I hope it's not taped. Clip. So it was huge. It wasn't like, this tiny one or your iPhones that you guys walk around with. No. It was this huge one. And probably it's now modern again, the guys that put it on there, yeah. And every time he was home, and you have to remember, my dad was a freedom fighter, okay? And he was up in the mountain with his Kalashnikov, with his people, and fighting. So I didn't know this guy. Like the first 5 years, I have no idea who he was. Because we were fleeing from one village to another. We were always on the move. And sometime, out of nowhere, in the middle of the night, he would find us. I have no idea how. He would find us, he would come, and he had a beard, and he was dirty, and he was stinking, and he would just come and sit with us. And my older sibling will show him so much respect, and my mom would be so happy to see him. And I remember sitting there, and I was always very suspicious and very, very angry that he would come and take my mom away from me. So I didn't like him. And I didn't like him for another reason also, because one day he came home and we could hear the airplanes coming, and he turned off all the lights. When I say lights, it's not like lights, electricity lights. No, it was, oil lamps. Yeah, you're lucky if you had that. So he turned that off, and I was afraid of the dark. I'm still terrified of the dark. I am very old. I'm not gonna say my age. I'm very old, but I still cannot sleep without having light there. Wow. So this guy comes, this stranger, and he turned off the light, and he's like, they're gonna find us, they're gonna bomb us, so there's nothing to do. And I start crying, and I start shouting at him, and like, get out, get out. And he wanted me to calm down because he was afraid that they're gonna hear us, and he slapped me. And I told him, I said, you're not my dad, I'm not gonna talk to you. And my mom actually tells me now that I didn't talk to my dad from I was 3 years old until I was 5. And I started talking to him again when my mom was gone, because I had to. So I'm very stubborn, I know that, yeah. Which is good, but sometimes it's bad. So this guy, he would come back. Every time he came back, what he would do, he got this radio. I don't know how he could walk around being freedom fighter with his Kalashnikov and this big radio. I have no idea how he did that. So what he did is he started listening to news. First, he would start with the Kurdish news, and then he goes and turn on and try really to find it. Tune it until he finds it. Israel news, then American news, then Russian news, then Iranian news, and Iraqi news, and Turkey news, and that will go on the whole night. For 16 years, not 16 years, but 13 years, that's how it was, okay? And in the beginning, for many years, I couldn't understand it, and I hated it, especially when we were eating. I was like, because I felt he didn't see us. He didn't, see his own children. He was just listening to news. But then I remember when I realized why this radio was so important. It was in the middle of the night, and it was the beginning of the first Gulf War. We are underground, and at that point, we have no idea if when the airplanes come and there's a siren going, you don't know if it's the Iraqi, the Saddam airplanes, they come. If they are the Iraqi ones, we knew that he would use chemical weapon again. And when they're using chemical weapons, it's really important to go up, okay? Because it's the chemical is it's heavy, so it goes down. So if you're really high up, you still can breathe. There's a chance that you can survive. But we didn't know if it could have been, the American ones, and then they will bomb. So, and if it's bomb, you have to go underground, okay? So we almost just flip a coin every time to figure that out. And I realized that day, we're sitting there and the siren is going, and my dad was listening to the radio again. And we had to make a choice. And he made the choice. He said, we're gonna go up. I heard something in the radio. I really think it's a gas thing. So we went up, and I started having panic attack. I couldn't breathe. We had a room in the second floor of the house that we were in that was prepared for the gas. So we had kind of taped every corner so no air would come in. And I had an idea that there was no air inside, so I started panicking. So my parents, they started looking at each other, and they were like, okay, which one of us will go out with her? Which one of us will go out and maybe die? And who's the strongest to be able to take care of the rest of the kids, if that happens? So my mom is the strongest one. She's been the one fleeing with all the children. So I went out with my dad. And I remember asking him, why do you always listen to the radio? And he looked at me and he said, Mozhdeh, because there are people out there who are fighting for us. They know that we're here, and I'm waiting to hear their voices. I'm waiting to hear that there are demonstrations in Europe, in other places, and that are people actually pressuring their governments so they will do something about it. And when I listen to the radio, I hear the news of what is going on out there. And I realized that's what he was doing. All these years, he was sitting and waiting to know that there was somebody out there in the world who actually knew that he was stuck there with his family. And they cared. They really cared. So the small things that we do here, the demonstration that we go to, we might think, that doesn't help, it doesn't make any difference. Believe me, for people who are in the middle of it, people who are sitting there and waiting for an airplane come to bomb them and take their life, it matters when they know that they're not alone. The worst feeling when you are in a war zone is to think nobody cares. I could die here all alone and nobody cares. Nobody cares if I'm a human being or a dog, or, I'm saying a dog matter also, but, it's just, if you're an animal or a human being, it's the same thing. So what are we going to do here today? It really matters. What are we going to decide to do actions? It's going to matter, okay? And even if they don't hear about it, it's for our own humanity to know that we have so much respect for their lives that we will not just sit here and do nothing. All right, so by that, I will say thank you, and please take a break.
Thank you, Mara.
Thank you.